To today's meeting of Srimad Bhagavatam. We are starting the new chapters, chapter 7 of the third canto. Before that, we recite the Mahima Stotra of Sanatana Goswami in glorification of Srimad Bhagavatam. Sarva Shastrabdi Piyusha Sarva Vidaika Satpalam Sarva Siddhanta Ratnadya Sarva Lokaika Drikprada Sarva Bhagavata Prana Srimad Bhagavata Prabhu Kalidvanto Ditaditya Shri Krishna Parivartita Paramananda Patnaya Prema Vakshaksharayate Sarvanda Sarvasivyaya Shri Krishna Namostume Madhika Bandho Matsangin Madguru Matmahadana Manishtaraka Madbhagya Madananda Namostute Asadu Sadutadai Natini Chochataraka Hanamuncha Kadachinma Premna Hriz. O nectar from the old scripture, singular fruit Vedas, rich mine of the precious gems of all, you are the only giver of sight to all of the worlds. O life air of all of the Supreme Lord's devotees, Srimad Bhagavatam, you are the sun reasoning in the darkness of Kali, image of Shri Krishna. I bow down to you who are supremely blissful to read. Your every syllable pours down a flood of prema. Always be served by everyone. You are Shri Krishna himself. My only friend, my constant companion, my spiritual master, my great wealth, my savior, my good fortune, my source of ecstasy, I bow down to you. O restorer of saintliness to the unsaintly, O exalter of the most fallen, please never leave me. Always appear in my heart and my voice with pure love. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hare Krishna, welcome again. Today's reading, we continue where we left off. We finished chapter 6 last week of the third canto. We are starting a fresh chapter 7 entitled Further Inquiries by Vidura. Text 1. Sri Shukadeva Goswami said, O king, while Maitreya, the great sage, was thus speaking, Vidura, the learned son of Dvaipayana Vyasa, expressed a request in a pleasing manner by asking this question. 2. Sri Vidura said, O great Brahmanan, since the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the complete spiritual whole and is unchangeable, how is he connected with the material modes of nature and their activities? If this is his pastime, how do the activities of the unchangeable take place and exhibit qualities without the modes of nature? Purport by Srila Prabhupada. As described in the previous chapter, the difference between the Supersoul, the Supreme Lord, and the living entities is that the activities of the Lord in creating the cosmic manifestation are performed by the Lord through the agency of his multifarious energies. But this manifestation is bewildering to the living entities. The Lord is therefore the master of the energies, whereas the living entities are subjugated by them. By asking various questions about transcendental activities, Vidura is clearing the misconception that when the Lord either descends on the earth in his incarnation or appears himself with all his potencies, he too is subjected to the influence of mind, just like an ordinary living entity. This is generally the calculation of less intelligent philosophers, who consider the position of the Lord and that of the living entities to be on the same level. Vidura is hearing the great sage Maitreya refute these arguments. The Lord is described in this verse as Chinmatra, or completely spiritual. The personality of Godhead has unlimited potencies to create and manifest many wonderful things, both temporary and permanent. Because this material world is the creation of his external energy, it thus appears to be temporary. It is manifested at certain intervals, maintained for some time, and again dissolved and conserved in his own energy. As described in Bhagavad Gita 8.19, Bhutva Bhutva Praliyate. But the creation of his internal potency, the spiritual world, is not a temporary manifestation like the material world, but is eternal and full of transcendental knowledge, opulence, energy, strength, beauties, and glories. Such manifestations of the Lord's potencies are eternal and are therefore called nirguna, or free from all tinges of the modes of material nature, even up to the mode of material goodness. The spiritual world is transcendental even to material goodness and thus is unchangeable. Since the Supreme Lord is such eternal and unchangeable qualities, since the Supreme Lord of such eternal and unchangeable qualities is never subjugated by anything like material influence, how can his activities and form be conceived to be under the influence of illusory Maya, as is the case with the living entities? A juggler or magician displays many wonders with his acts and arts. He can become a cow by his magical tactics, and yet he is not that cow. But at the same time, the cow displayed by the magician is not different from him. Similarly, the material potency is not different from the Lord, because it is an emanation from him. But at the same time, that manifestation of potency is not the Supreme Lord. The Lord's transcendental knowledge and potency always remain the same. They do not change, even when displayed in the material world. As stated in Bhagavad Gita, the Lord descends on the earth by his own internal potency, and therefore there is no question of his becoming materially contaminated, changed, or otherwise affected by the modes of material nature. The Lord is Saguna by his own internal potency, but at the same time he is Nirguna, since he is not in touch with the material energy. The restrictions of the prison house are applicable to prisoners who are condemned by the king's law, but a king is never affected by such implications, although he may visit the prison house out of his good will. In the Vishnu Purana, the 6 opulences of the Lord are stated to be non-different from him. The opulences of transcendental knowledge, strength, opulence, potency, beauty, and renunciation are all identical with the personality of Godhead. When he personally displays such opulences in the material world, they have no connection with the modes of material nature. The very word Chin Matratva is the guarantee that the Lord's activities are always transcendental, even when displayed in the material world. His activities are as good as the Supreme Personality himself. Otherwise, liberated devotees like Shukadeva Goswami would not have been attracted by them. Vidura inquired how the Lord's activities can be in the modes of material nature, as is sometimes miscalculated by persons with a poor fund of knowledge. The inebriety of the material qualities is due to the difference between the material body and the spirit soul. The conditioned soul's activities are displayed through the medium of the modes of material nature and are therefore perverted in appearance. However, the Lord's body and the Lord himself are one and the same, and when the Lord's activities are displayed, they are certainly non-different from the Lord in all respects. The conclusion is that persons who consider the Lord's activities material are certainly mistaken. Text 3. Boys are enthusiastic to play with other boys or with various diversions because they are encouraged by desire. But there is no possibility of such desire for the Lord because he is self-satisfied and detached from everything at all times. Purport. Since the Supreme Personality of Godhead is one without a second, there is no possibility that anything besides him can exist. He expands himself by his energies in multiforms of self-expansions and separated expansions as well, just as fire expands itself by heat and light. Since there is no other existence besides the Lord himself, the Lord's association with anything manifests his association with himself. In Bhagavad Gita 9.4 the Lord says, Maitatam idam sarvam jagat avyakta murtinam matstani sarva bhutani nachahanti shavastita. The complete manifestation of the cosmic situation is an expansion of the Lord himself in his impersonal feature. All things are situated in him only, yet he is not in them. End quote. That is the opulence of the Lord's attachment and detachment. He is attached to everything, yet he is detached from all. Text 4. By his self-sheltered potency of the 3 modes of material nature, the Lord has caused the creation of this universe. By her, he maintains the creation and conversely dissolves it again and again. Purport. This cosmic universe is created by the Lord for those living entities who are carried away by the illusory thought of becoming one with him by imitation. The three modes of material nature are for the further bewilderment of the conditioned souls. The conditioned living entity, bewildered by the illusory energy, considers himself a part of the material creation due to the forgetfulness of his spiritual identity, and thus he becomes entangled in material activities life after life. This material world is not for the purpose of the Lord himself, but is for the conditioned souls who wanted to be controllers due to misuse of their God-gifted minute independence. Thus the conditioned souls are subjected to repeated birth and death. Text 5. The pure soul is pure consciousness and is never out of consciousness, either due to circumstances, time, situations, dreams, or other causes. How then does he become engaged in nescience? Purport. The consciousness of the living being is always present and never changes under any circumstances, as above mentioned. When a living man moves from one place to another, he is conscious that he has changed his position. He is always present in the past, present, and future, like electricity. One can remember incidents from his past and can conjecture about his future also on the basis of past experience. He never forgets his personal identity, even though he is placed in awkward circumstances. How then can the living entity become forgetful of his real identity as pure spirit soul and identify with matter unless influenced by something beyond himself? The conclusion is that the living entity is influenced by the avidya potency, as confirmed in both the Vishnu Purana and the beginning of Srimad Bhagavatam. The living entity is mentioned in Bhagavad Gita 7.5 as Para Prakriti, and in the Vishnu Purana he is mentioned as the Parashakti. He is part and parcel of the Supreme Lord as potency and not as the potent. The potent can exhibit many potencies, but the potency cannot equal the potent at any stage. One potency may be overcome by another potency, but to the potent, all potencies are under control. The Jiva potency, or the Kshetragya Shakti of the Lord, has the tendency to be overpowered by the external potency, Avidya Karma Samya, and in this way he is placed in the awkward circumstances of material existence. The living entity cannot be forgetful of his real identity unless influenced by the avidya potency. Because the living entity is prone to the influence of the avidya potency, he can never equal the supreme potent. Avidya means ignorance. Text 6. The Lord, as the Supersoul, is situated in every living being's heart. Why then do the living entities' activities result in misfortune and misery? Purport. The next question put forward by Vidura to Maitreya is, why are the living entities subjected to so many miseries and misfortunes, in spite of the Lord's presence in their hearts as the Supersoul? End quote. The body is considered a fruitful tree, and the living entity and the Lord as Supersoul are like two birds seated in that tree. The individual soul is eating the fruit of the tree, but the Supersoul, the Lord, is witnessing the activities of the other bird. A citizen of the state may be in miseries for want of sufficient supervision by the state authority, but how can it be possible that a citizen suffers from other citizens while the chief of the state is personally present? From another point of view, it is understood that the Jiva living entity is qualitatively one with the Lord, and thus his knowledge in the pure state of life cannot be covered by nescience, especially in the presence of the Supreme Lord. How then does the living entity become subjected to ignorance and covered by the influence of Maya? The Lord is the Father and Protector of every living entity, and he is known as the Bhuta Brit, or the maintainer of the living entities. Why then should the living entity be subjected to so many sufferings and misfortunes? It should not be so, but actually we see that it happens everywhere. This question is therefore put forward by Vidura for solution. Text 7. O great and learned one, my mind is greatly illusioned by the distress of these nations, and I therefore request you to clear it up. Purport. Such mental bewilderment is, as represented here by Vidura, takes place for some living entities, but not for everyone, For if everyone were bewildered, there would be no possibility of a solution by higher personalities. 8. Sri Shukadev Goswami said, O king, Maitreya, being thus agitated by the inquisitive Vidura, at first seemed astonished, but then he replied to him without hesitation, since he was fully God-conscious. Purport. Since the great sage Maitreya was filled with God-consciousness, he had no reason to be astonished at such contradictory questions by Vidura. Therefore, although as a devotee he externally expressed surprise, as he did not know how to reply to those questions, he immediately became perfectly settled and properly replied to Vidura. Yasmin vigyate sarvam evam vignatam bhavati. Who is a devotee of the Lord knows about the Lord to some extent, and devotional service to the Lord makes him able to know everything by the grace of the Lord. Although a devotee may apparently express himself ignorant, he is full of knowledge in every intricate matter. Text 9. Sri Maitreya said, certain conditioned souls put forward the theory that the Supreme Brahman, or the personality of Godhead, is overcome by illusion or Maya, and at the same time they maintain that it is unconditioned. This is against all logic. Purport. Sometimes it appears that the Supreme of Godhead, who is 100% spiritual, cannot be the cause of the potency which covers the knowledge of the individual soul. There is no doubt that the external energy is part and parcel of the Supreme Lord. When Vyasadeva realized the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he told the Lord along his external potency, which covers the pure knowledge of the individual. Why the external energy acts in this way is as follows, as analyzed by great commentator Vishwanatha Chakravarti Thakur and Sri Goswami. Although the material illusion is distinct from the spiritual energy, the energies of the mode of goodness, etc., are surely qualities of the Lord. The energy and although such energy is the Lord, he is never. These are also parcels of the Lord. They are over the material energy. The yoga, as mentioned in 5, is Mystish philosopher. In order to support a theory that Narayana, the Lord himself, becomes a Daridra Narayana, a poor man, they propose that the material energy overcomes the Supreme Lord. Srila Jiva Goswami and Srila Vishwanatha Chakravarti Thakur, however, offer a very nice example in explanation. They say that although the sun is all light, the clouds, darkness, and snowfall are all part and parcel of the sun. Without the sun, there is no possibility of the skies being overcast with clouds or darkness, nor can there be snowfall on the earth. Although life is sustained by the sun, life is also disturbed by darkness and snowfall produced by the sun. But it is also a fact that the sun itself is never overcome by darkness, clouds, or snowfall. The sun is far, far away from such disturbances. Only those who have a poor fund of knowledge say that the sun is covered by cloud or by darkness. Similarly, the Supreme Brahman, or the Para-Brahman, the personality of Godhead, is always unaffected by the influence of the material energy, although it is one of his energies. Parasya Shaktir Vividhaiva Shruyati. There is no reason to assert that the Supreme Brahman is overpowered by the illusory energy. The clouds, darkness, and snowfall can cover only a very insignificant portion of the sun's rays. Similarly, the modes of material nature may react upon the ray-like living entities. It is the misfortune of the living entity, certainly not without reason, that the influence of the material energy acts on his pure consciousness and eternal bliss. This covering up of pure consciousness and eternal bliss is due to avidya karma samya, the energy which acts on the infinitesimal living entities who misuse their minute independence. According to Vishnu Purana, Bhagavad Gita, and all other Vedic literatures, the living entities are generated from the Tatashta energy of the Lord, and thus they are always the energy of the Lord and are not the energetic. The living entities are like the sun's rays. Although, as explained above, there is no qualitative difference between the sun and its rays, the sun's rays are sometimes overpowered by another energy of the sun, namely by clouds or by snowfall. Similarly, although the living entities are qualitatively one with the superior energy of the Lord, they have the tendency to be overpowered by the inferior material energy. In the Vedic hymns, it is said that the living entities are like the sparks of a fire. The sparks of fire also are fire, but the burning potency of the sparks is different from that of the original fire. When the sparks fly out of touch with the original fire, they come under the influence of the non-fiery atmosphere. Thus they maintain the potency to be again one with the fire as sparks, but not as the original fire. The sparks can everlastingly remain within the original fire as its parts and parcels, but the moment the sparks become separated from the original fire, their misfortunes and miseries begin. The clear conclusion is that the Supreme Lord, who is the original fire, is never overpowered, but the infinitesimal sparks of the fire can be overpowered by the illusion of Maya. It is a most ludicrous to say that the Lord is overpowered by material energy. The Lord is the master of energy, but the living entities are in conditioned state of material energy. That is the version of Bhagavad Gita. The froggish philosophers who put forward the argument that the Supreme Lord is overpowered by the material mode of goodness are themselves illusioned by the same material energy, although they think of themselves as souls. They support their arguments by a false and glorious jugglery of words, which is a gift of the same illusory energy of the Lord. But the poor froggish philosophers, full sense of knowledge, cannot understand the situation. In the 6th canto, chapter 34th verse of the Srimad Bhagavatam, it is stated, it is Durava Bodha Ivtavayam Vihara Yogo Yat Asharana Sharira Idam Anavekshitasmat Sama Atmana Vaivi Vyaya Manena Sagunam Agunam Srijasi. That's nice. Srijasi Pasi Harasi. Thus the demigods prayed to Supreme Lord that although activities are very difficult to understand, they can still be understood to some extent, sincerely engaged in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. The demigods admitted that although the Lord is apart from the material influence or creation, he nevertheless creates, maintains, and annihilates the complete cosmic manifestation by the agency of the demigods. Text 10. The living entity is in distress regarding his self-identity. He has no factual background, like a man who dreams that he sees his head cut off. A teacher in school once threatened his pupil that he would cut off the pupil and hang it on the wall so that the child could see how his head had been cut off. The child became frightened and stopped his mischief. Similarly, the miseries of pure soul and the disruption of his self-identification are managed by the external energy of the Lord, which controls those mischievous living entities who want to go against the will of the Lord. Actually, there is bondage or misery for the living entity, nor does he ever lose his pure knowledge. In his pure consciousness, when he thinks a little seriously about his position, he can understand that he is eternally subordinate to the mercy of the Supreme, and the attempt to become one with the Supreme Lord is a false illusion. Life after life, the living entity falsely tries to lord it over material nature and become the lord of the material world, but there is no tangible result. At last, frustrated, he gives up his material activities and tries to become one with the Lord, speculate with much jugglery of words, but without success. These activities are performed at the dictation of the illusory energy. The experience is compared to the experience of one's having his head cut off in a dream. His head had been cut off also sees that his head cut off. If a person's head is severed, he loses his power to see. Therefore, if a man sees that his head has been cut off, it means that he thinks like that in a hallucination. Similarly, a living entity is eternally subordinate to the Supreme Lord, and he has this knowledge with him. But artificially he thinks that he is God himself and that although he is God, he has lost his knowledge due to Maya. This conception has no meaning, just as there is no meaning to seeing one's head being cut off. This is the process by which knowledge is covered. And because this artificial rebellious condition of the living entity gives him all troubles, it is to be understood that he should take to his normal life as a devotee of the Lord and be relieved from the misconception of being God. The so-called liberation of thinking oneself God is that last reaction of avidya by which the living entity is entrapped. The conclusion is that the living entity deprived of eternal transcendental service to the Lord becomes illusioned in many ways. Even in his conditioned life, he is the eternal servant of the Lord. His servitude under the spell of illusory Maya is also a manifestation of his eternal condition of service. Because he has rebelled against the service of the Lord, he is therefore put in the service of the Maya. He is still serving, but in a perverted manner. When he wants to get out of service under material bondage, he next desires to become one with the Lord. This is another illusion. The best course, therefore, is to surrender unto the Lord and thus get rid of the illusory Maya for good, as confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 7:14. Daivi hiesha gunamayi mama maya duratyaya mameva ye prapadyante mayametam tarantite. Text 11. As the moon reflected on water appears to the seer to tremble due to being associated with the quality of the water, so the self associated with matter appears to be qualified as matter. Purport. The Supreme Soul, the personality of Godhead, is compared to the moon in the sky, and the living entities are compared to the reflection of the moon on water. The moon in the sky is fixed and does not appear to quiver like the moon on the water. Actually, like the original moon in the sky, the moon reflected on the water should also not quiver, but because of being associated with water, the reflection appears to be quivering, although in actual fact the moon is fixed. The water moves, but the moon does not move. Similarly, the living entities appear to be tainted by material qualities like illusion, lamentation, and miseries, although in the pure soul such qualities are completely absent. The word pratiyate, which means apparently and not actually, like the experience of having one's head cut off in a dream, is significant here. The reflection of the moon on the water is the separated rays of the moon, and not the actual moon. The separated parts and parcels of the Lord, entangled in the water of material existence, have the quivering quality, whereas the Lord is like the actual moon in the sky, which is not at all in touch with the water. The light of the sun and moon reflected on matter makes the matter bright and praiseworthy. The living symptoms are compared to the light of the sun and the moon illuminating material manifestations like trees and mountains. The reflection of the sun or moon is accepted as the real sun or moon by less intelligent men, and the pure monistic philosophy develops from these ideas. In fact, the light of the sun and the moon are actually different from the sun and the moon themselves, although they are always connected. The light of the moon spread throughout the sky appears to be impersonal, but the moon planet, as it is personal, and the living entities on the moon planet are also personal. In the rays of the moon, different material entities appear to be comparatively more or less important. The light of the moon on the Taj Mahal appears to be more beautiful than the same light in the wilderness. Although the light of the moon is the same everywhere, due to being differently appreciated, it appears different. Similarly, the light of the Lord is equally distributed everywhere, but due to being differently received, it appears to be different. One should not, therefore, accept the reflection of the moon on the water as actual and misunderstand the whole situation through monistic philosophy. The quivering quality of the moon is also variable. When the water is standing still, there is no quivering. A more settled, conditioned soul quivers less, but due to material connection, the quivering quality is more or less present everywhere. Text 12. But that misconception of self-identity can be diminished gradually by the mercy of the personality of Godhead, Vasudeva, through the process of devotional service to the Lord in a mode of detachment. Purport. The quivering quality of material existence, which comes from identification with matter or from thinking oneself under the material influence of philosophical speculation to be God, can be eradicated by devotional service to the Lord, by the mercy of the personality of Godhead, Vasudeva. As discussed in the first canto, because the application of devotional service to Lord Vasudeva invites pure knowledge, it quickly detaches one from the material conceptual life and thus revives one's normal condition of spiritual existence even in this life, and frees one from the material winds which cause one to quiver. Only knowledge in devotional service can elevate one towards the path of liberation. The development of knowledge for the purpose of knowing everything without rendering devotional service is considered fruitless labor, and one cannot get the desired result by such labor of love. Lord Vasudeva is pleased by devotional service only, and thus his mercy is realized by association with pure devotees of the Lord. Pure devotees of the Lord are transcendental to all material desires, including the desire for the results of fruitive activities and philosophical speculation. If one wants to acquire the mercy of the Lord, he has to associate with pure devotees. Such association alone can, by degrees, release one from the quivering elements. Text 13. When the senses are satisfied in the seer Supersoul, the personality of Godhead, and merge in him, all miseries are completely vanquished, as after a sound sleep. Purport. The quivering of the living entity as described above is due to the senses. Since the entire material existence is meant for sense gratification, the senses are the medium of material activities, and they cause the quivering of the steady soul. Therefore, these senses are to be detached from all such material activities. According to the impersonalists, the senses are stopped from work by merging the soul in the supersoul Brahman. The devotees, however, do not stop the material senses from acting, but they engage their transcendental senses in the service of the transcendence, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In either case, the activities of the senses in the material field are to be stopped by cultivation of knowledge, and, if possible, they can be engaged in the service of the Lord. The senses are transcendental in nature, but their activities become polluted when contaminated by matter. We have to treat the senses to cure them of the material disease, not stop them from acting, as suggested by the impersonalist. In Bhagavad Gita 2.59, it is said that one ceases all material activities only when satisfied by contact with a better engagement. Consciousness is by nature not working. The child must be given some better so that he will automatically. In the same way, the activities of the senses can be engagement in relation with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. When the eyes are engaged in the beautiful form of the Lord, the tongue engaged in tasting prasada, or remnants of foodstuff offered to the Lord, the ear engaged in hearing in the temple of the Lord, the legs engaged in visiting his temples, or when all the senses are engaged in transcendental variegatedness, then only can the transcendental senses become satiated and eternally free from material engagement. The Lord, as the Supersoul residing in everyone's heart, and as the Supreme Personality of Godhead in the transcendental world, far beyond the material creation, is the seer of all our activities. Our activities must be so transcendently saturated that the Lord will be kind enough to look upon us favorably and engage in His transcendental service. Then only can the senses be satisfied completely and be no longer troubled by material attraction. Text 14. Simply by chanting and hearing of the transcendental name, form, etc. of the personality of Godhead, Shri Krishna, one can achieve the cessation of unlimited misery conditions. Therefore, what to speak of those who have attained attraction for serving the flesh, the dust of the lotus feet? Purport. Two different methods for controlling the material senses are recommended in the scriptural wisdom. One of them is the process of jnana, or the path of philosophical understanding of Supreme, Brahma, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. The other is that of direct engagement in the transcendental loving devotional service of the Lord. Of these two most popular methods, the path of devotional service is recommended here as the best, because one on the path of devotional service does not have to wait for the attainment of the fruit results of pious activities or for the results of knowledge. The two stages of executing devotional service are, first, the stage practicing devotional service with our present senses and relations of the recognized scriptures, and second, attaining sincere attachment for serving the particles of the dust of the lotus feet of the Lord. The first is called sadhana bhakti, or devotional service for the neophyte, which is rendered under the direction of a pure devotee, and the second stage is called raga bhakti, in which the mature devotee automatically takes to the various services of the out of sincere attachment. The great sage Maitreya now gives the final answer to the questions of Vidura. Devotional service to the Lord is the ultimate means to mitigate all forms of material existence. The path of knowledge or of mystic gymnastics may be adopted as a means of the purpose, but unless mixed with bhakti devotional service, they are unable to award the desired result. By practicing sadhana bhakti, one may gradually rise to the point of raga bhakti, and by performing raga bhakti in loving transcendental service, one can even control the supreme powerful Lord. Text 15. Vidura said, O powerful sage, my Lord, all my doubt about the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the living entities have now been removed by your convincing words. My mind is now perfectly entering into them. Purport. The science of Krishna, or the science of God and the living entities, is so subtle that even a personality like Vidura has to consult persons like the sage Maitreya. Doubts about the eternal relationship of the Lord and the living entity are created by mental speculators in different ways, but the conclusive fact is that the relationship of God and the living entity is one of the predominator and the predominated. The Lord is the eternal predominator, and the living entities are eternally predominated. Real knowledge of this relationship entails reviving the lost consciousness to this standard, and the process for such revival is devotional service to the Lord. By clearly understanding from authorities like the sage Maitreya, one can become situated in real knowledge, and the disturbed mind can thus be fixed on the progressive path. Text 16. O learned sage, your explanations are very good, as they should be. Disturbances to the conditioned soul have no other basis than the movement of the external energy of the Lord. Purport. A living entity's unlawful desire to become one with the Lord in every respect is the root cause of the entire material manifestation, for otherwise the Lord has no need to create such a manifestation, even for his pastimes. The conditioned soul, under the spell of the external energy of the Lord, falsely suffers many unfortunate incidents in material life. The Lord is the predominator of the external energy, Maya, whereas the living entity is predominated by the same Maya under the material condition. The false attempt of the living entity to occupy the predominating post of the Lord is the cause of his material bondage, and the conditioned soul's attempt to become one with the Lord is the last snare of Maya. Text 17. Both the lowest of fools and he who is transcendental to all intelligence enjoy happiness, whereas persons between them suffer the material pangs. Purport. The lowest of fools do not understand material miseries. They pass their lives merrily and do not inquire into the miseries of life. Such persons are almost on the level of the animals, who, although in the eyes of superiors are always miserable in life, are unaware of material distresses. A hog's life is degraded in its standard of happiness, which entails living in a filthy place, engaging in sex enjoyment at every opportune moment, and laboring hard in a struggle for existence. But this is unknown to the hog. Similarly, human beings who are unaware of the miseries of material existence and are happy in sex life and hard labor are the lowest of fools. Yet because they have no sense of miseries, they supposedly enjoy so-called happiness. The other class of men, those who are liberated and are situated in a transcendental position above intelligence, are really happy and are called Paramahamsas. But persons who are neither like hogs and dogs nor on the level of the Paramahamsas feel the material pangs, and for them inquire about the supreme truth is necessary. The Vedanta Sutra states, Atato Brahma Jigyasa. Now one should inquire about Brahman. This inquiry is necessary for those who are between the Paramahamsas and the fools who have forgotten the question of self-realization in the midst of life in sense gratification. Text 18. But my dear sir, I am obliged to you, because now I can understand that this material manifestation is without substance, although it appears real. I am confident that by serving your feet it will be possible for me to give up that false idea. Purport. The sufferings of the conditioned soul are superficial and have no intrinsic value, like the cutting off of one's head in a dream. Yet although this statement is theoretically very true, it is very difficult for the common man or the neophyte on the transcendental path to realize practically. However, by serving the feet of great transcendentalists like Maitreya Muni, and by constantly associating with them, one is enabled to give up the false idea that the soul suffers from material pangs. Text 19. By serving the feet of the spiritual master, one is enabled to develop transcendental ecstasy in the service of the personality of Godhead, who is unchangeable enemy of the Madhu demon, and whose service vanquishes one's material distresses. Purport. The association of a bona fide spiritual master like the sage Maitreya can be of absolute help in achieving transcendental attachment for the direct service of the Lord. The Lord is the enemy of the Madhu demon, or in other words, he is the enemy of the suffering of his pure devotee. The word rati rasaham is significant in this verse. Service to the Lord is rendered in different transcendental mellows, relationships: neutral, active, friendly, parental, and nuptial. A living entity in the liberated position of transcendental service to the Lord becomes attracted to one of the above mentioned mellows, and when one is engaged in transcendental loving service to the Lord, one's service attachment in the material world is automatically vanquished. As stated in Bhagavad Gita 259, Rasa Varjam Rasopyasya Param Drishtva Nivartate. Text 20. Persons whose austerity is meager can hardly obtain the service of the pure devotees who are progressing on the path back to the kingdom of Godhead, the Vaikunthas. Pure devotees engaged 100% in glorifying the Supreme Lord, who is the Lord of the demigods and the controller of all living entities. Purport. The path of liberation, as recommended by all authorities, is to serve the Mahatma or Transcendentalists. As far as Bhagavad Gita is concerned, the Mahatmas are the pure devotees who are on the path to Vaikuntha, the kingdom of God, and who always chant and hear the glories of the Lord rather than talk of dry, profitless philosophy. This system of association has been recommended since time immemorial, but in this age of quarreling hypocrisy, it is especially recommended by Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Even if one has no assets of favorable austerity, if he nevertheless takes shelter of the Mahatmas who are engaged in chanting and hearing the glories of the Lord, he is sure to make progress on the path back home, back to Godhead. 21. After creating the total material energy, the Mahatattva, and thereby manifesting the gigantic universal form with senses and sense organs. The Supreme Lord entered within it. Purport. Fully satisfied by the answers of the sage Maitreya, Vidura wanted to understand the remaining portions of the creative function of the Lord, and he took the clue from the previous topics. Text 22. The Purusha incarnation lying on the causal ocean is called the original Purusha in the material creation, and in his Virat form, in whom all the planets and their inhabitants live, he has many thousands of legs and hands. Purport. The first Purusha is Karanodakashai Vishnu. The second Purusha is Garbhodakashai Vishnu. And the third Purusha is Kshirodakashai Vishnu, in whom is contemplated the Virat Purusha, the gigantic form in which all the planets with their different developments and inhabitants are floating. Text 23. O great Brahmana, you have told me that the gigantic Virat form and his senses, sense objects, and 10 kinds of life air exist with 3 kinds of life vigor. Now, if you will, kindly explain to me the different powers of the specific divisions. 24. O my Lord, I think that the process manifest in the forms of sons, grandsons, and family members has spread all over the universe in different varieties and species. 25. O learned Brahmana, please describe how the leader of all the demigods, namely Prajapati, Brahma, decided to establish the various Manus, the heads of the ages. Please describe the Manus also, and please describe the descendants of those Manus. Purport. The human race, or Manushya Sara, descends from the Manus, sons and grandsons of the Prajapati, Brahma. The descendants of Manu reside in all the different planets and rule all the universe. 26. O son of Mitra, kindly describe how the planets are situated above the earth as well as underneath it, and also please mention their measurement as well as that of the earthly planets. Purport. Yasmin vigyate sarvam evam vigyatam bhavati. This very hymn declares emphatically that the devotee of the Lord knows everything material and spiritual in relationship with the Lord. Devotees are not simply emotional, as is ill-conceived by certain less intelligent men. Their direction is practical. They know everything that is and all the details of the Lord's domination over the different creations. 27. Also, please describe the living beings under different classifications: subhumans, humans, those born of the embryo, those born of perspiration, those who are twice born, birds, and the plants and vegetables. Kindly describe their generations and subdivisions also. 28. Please also describe the incarnations of the material modes of nature, Brahma, Vishnu, and Maheshwara. And please describe the incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and his magnanimous activities. Purport. Although Brahma, Vishnu, and Maheshwara, the 3 incarnations of the material modes of nature, are the principal deities for the creation, maintenance, and destruction of the cosmic manifestation, they are not the final authority. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna, is the ultimate goal, the cause of all causes. He is the Ashraya, or the final rest of everything. 29. O great sage, kindly describe the divisions and orders of human society in terms of symptoms, behavior, and the characteristics of mental equilibrium and sense control. Also, please describe the birth of the great sages and the categorical divisions of the Vedas. Purport. The 4 statuses and orders of human society, Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Shudras, as well as Brahmacharis, Grihastas, Vanaprasthas, and Sannyasis, are all divisions of quality, education, culture, and spiritual advancement attained by practicing control of the mind and the senses. All these divisions are based on the particular nature of each individual person, not on the principle of birth. Birth is not mentioned in this verse because birth is immaterial. Vidura is famous in history as born of a Shudrani mother, yet he is more than a Brahmana by qualification because he is seen here to be the disciple of a great sage, Maitreya Muni. Unless one achieves at least the Brahminical qualifications, one cannot understand the Vedic hymns. Mahabharata is also a division of the Vedas, but it is meant for women, Shudras and Vijabandhus, the worthless children of the higher section. The less intelligent section of society can avail themselves of the Vedic instructions simply by studying the Mahabharata. Text 30. Please also describe the expansions of different sacrifices and the paths of mystic powers, analytical study of knowledge and devotional service, all with their respective regulations. Purport. The word tantram is significant herein. Sometimes tantram is misunderstood to be the black spiritual science of materialistic persons engaged in sense gratification. But here tantram means the science of devotional service compiled by Srila Narada Muni. One can take advantage of such regulative explanations of the path of devotional service and make progressive advancement in the devotional service of the Lord. Sankhya philosophy is the basic principle of acquiring knowledge, as will be explained by the sage Maitreya. The Sankhya philosophy enunciated by Kapila Deva, the son of Devahuti, is the real source of knowledge about the Supreme Truth. Knowledge not based on the Sankhya philosophy is mental speculation and can yield no tangible profit. Text 31. Please also describe the imperfections and contradictions of the faithless atheists, the situation of crossbreeding, and the movements of the living entities in the various species of life according to their particular modes of nature and work. Purport. The combination of living entities in different modes of material nature is called crossbreeding. The faithless atheists do not believe in the existence of God, and thus their paths of philosophy are contradictory. Atheistic philosophies never agree with one another. Different species of life are evidence of varieties of mixtures of the modes of material nature. 32. You may also describe the non-contradictory causes of religiosity, economic development, sense gratification, and salvation, and also the different means of livelihood and different processes of law and order as mentioned in the revealed scriptures. 33. Please also explain the regulations for offering respects to the forefathers, the creation of the Pitriloka, the time schedule in the planets, stars and luminaries, and their respective situations. Purport. The time durations of day and night, as well as months and years, are different in the different planets, stars and luminaries. The higher planets like the Moon and Venus have time measurements different from those on the Earth. It is said that 6 months of this planet Earth equal 1 day of the higher planets. In Bhagavad Gita, the duration of 1 day in years multiplied by 1,000. And the month and year in Brahmaloka are calculated in that measure. 34. Please also describe the fruity results of charity and penance, and of digging reservoirs of water. Please describe the situation of persons who are away from home, and also the duty of a man in an awkward position. Purport. The digging of reservoirs of water for public use is a great work of charity, and retiring from family life after 50 years of age is a great act of penance performed by the sober human being. And text 45, today's last. O sinless one, because the personality of Godhead, the controller of all living entities, is the father of all religion and all those who are candidates for religious activities, kindly describe how he can be completely satisfied. Purport. All religious activities are meant ultimately to satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Lord is the father of all religious principles. As stated in Bhagavad Gita 7:16, 4 kinds of pious men, the needy, the distressed, the enlightened, and the inquisitive, approach the Lord in devotional service, and their devotion is mixed with material affection. But above them are the pure devotees, whose devotion is not tainted by any material tinges of fruity work or speculative knowledge. Those who are only miscreants through their lives are compared to demons. Bhagavad Gita 7:15. They are bereft of all knowledge, in spite of any academic education or career they may pursue. Such miscreants are never candidates for satisfying the Lord. So we end here with verse 35. Tomorrow we're starting verse 36. Chapter 7, Canto 3. So, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Thank you very much.